Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started at 6:01. My name is Norval Barrett, I'm the Vice President of Communications for the Metro New York Chapter of National Black MBA. I want to thank you for attending today's first session, session one of many sessions focusing on conference career prep. We look forward to preparing you and getting you ready for this recruiting season that's going to take place. We're going to get started at 6 o'clock. And get ready, get your notepad together, get a pen, get ready, get prepared for upcoming career opportunities with National Black MBA and the Metro New York Chapter of National Black MBA. Good afternoon. We'll get started shortly. Thank you so much for attending on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I'm gonna get started shortly. For those of you who have questions, who are seeking to apply the things that you are learning within this presentation and within these workshops, please use the chat feature and the Q&A or the Q&A feature for questions throughout the presentation. We'll make sure we get your questions answered. I want to thank you for joining us for today's prep session. We'll get started shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 6 o'clock. We'll get started shortly. Thank you so much for attending today's prep session focusing on researching companies. My name is Norval Barrington. I am the Vice President of Communications for the Metro New York Chapter of National Black MBA. If there's any one topic that I'm excited about as it relates to this organization and how we service our members and how we make sure we prepare you, is this particular topic, which is being prepared for recruitment opportunities. We're going to hear from our subject matter experts in this area. We're also going to hear from our chapter president shortly. We're going to get started shortly. I know that a number of you are coming off of work and we're going to get started. So thank you so much for attending today's session. This is very crucial that we make sure that we are all prepared for recruitment opportunities, as there are a number of companies hiring. And we'll get started shortly. We'll get started at 6:02. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Metro New York Chapter's conference preparation sessions. We want to thank our sponsors, MAC Cosmetics, Estee Lauder, the Estee Lauder brand companies, Morgan Stanley, Bean Cemetery, and Fearing Pharmaceutical. Today, we want to highlight Morgan Stanley for their contributions to our chapter and the dedicated support to not only the growth of our chapter, but making sure that the resources that are needed in order to continue to build on the legacy of our organization. We want to thank you so much for your continuous support. I want to thank Darla, who is one of the executives there at Morgan Stanley. And we'll hear from a chapter president shortly. Again, my name is Norval Barrington. I want to welcome you today to our first session 1 of 4, where we're going to dive into conference and career opportunities as it relates to building your career portfolio and making sure that you're prepared. In this first session, we're going to do overview of how to get prepared from a research and prep perspective. We have our expert, who I'm going to introduce shortly. And I'm going to also highlight some of the opportunities that we're going to highlight from a chapter perspective and also from a national perspective. Before I do that, I want to introduce our great chapter president, Andrew Hamilton, for remarks. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today? Good.
Great.
Again, like to thank our sponsor, Morgan Stanley. I can't thank enough for our partner leaning in with us and supporting us. not only providing professional services, but also providing career opportunities that a lot of our members have taken advantage of. There's quite a few Black MBA members and other affinity groups like NABA that are part of that organization. And I'd like to say a heartfelt thanks to all of them to supporting us over the number of years. Like my colleague said before earlier, these sessions are designed to help you be successful. We want you to be your best self when coming to the Black MBA conference. And not only we want you to be successful, but I want you to also carry us in spirit with us when you get your respective jobs. Because these organizations like ourselves are really dependent on you guys really singing and ringing the bell for us inside your respective organizations that Black MBA, NABA, NSN, organizations like us are essential in development and growth and making everyone feels a certain way. So on behalf of the board, I welcome you this evening. I'm looking forward to this presentation. And more importantly, I'm looking forward for your success in the near future. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Andrew, for your remarks. And again, thank you so much for your leadership. Andrew Hamilton has served for many years with our organization, and we would not be in the position that we are in now without Andrew's leadership and guidance. So thank you so much, Andrew, on behalf of our entire executive board, members, sponsors. Thank you so much for your leadership. Now, coming up in this recruiting season, there are 3 key events that are happening that are going to be instrumental for career opportunities. The first one is on September 9th. Our chapter is hosting our quarterly virtual career fair, led by Chuck Roberts, Kevin Anderson. A number of our corporate sponsors will be presenting opportunities for you to advance your career, regardless of where you're at in your career, whether you're entering a new opportunity, whether you're a career switcher or whether you are a senior leader within your organization. We do have career opportunities that align to your specific needs and desires. So we want to make sure we highlight that, and that's going to happen September 9th. Our 51st, so as we celebrate our 51st year as an organization, our national organization is celebrating our 43rd annual Conference of Career Expo, which will be in Chicago, Illinois. This is going to be an exciting time, not only to connect with other professionals, but also connect with companies and get hands-on experience or hands-on opportunities to learn more, not only about companies, but more importantly, to see how you can advance your career, which we're going to get into with these sessions. We also have an option, which is going to be the following week, which is September 21st and 22nd, where we're going to be highlighting a virtual career fair on a national basis. Now, if you've been to our conference last year we did it virtually. So we're going to have the similar look and feel, but new bells and whistles to make sure that individuals in different areas are advancing their opportunities to grow their career. So 3 opportunities within the month of September where you'll be able to connect with companies on a face-to-face basis or even virtual basis where you'll be able to hone in and connect with companies. Why is this important? Because there are more than 200 companies that are featured not only from a national basis, but a number of our corporate sponsors are highlighted here as well. The economists say that jobs are down or companies are not hiring, but companies are hiring. Now it's about learning about these opportunities and how to position yourself for these new opportunities. And with that being said, there was an overview of sessions that we're going to focus on. Today, we're going to specifically focus on research and prep. Next week, we'll go over resume and elevator pitches. The following week, we'll go on August 18th, where we'll talk about interviewing opportunities and how the landscape has changed with technology and what you should be looking at from a experience in terms of connecting with employers from a face-to-face or even virtual basis, even how to fill out and how to complete online algorithm systems that then either give you opportunity to advance within a company or not as well. So those are test interviews as well. And then there's the in-person experience where we'll kind of highlight the logistics of our upcoming conference and what you should expect going forward. Now, today I have the great honor in introducing my friend, my RBS MBA. I can't say much. I can say so much about Katrina, Garner, Boyd, but Katrina, I've known Katrina since 2013, I believe maybe 2012, where both of us were candidates at the Rutgers Business School. And what she was able to do in terms of her recruiting prowess entering the National Black Conference is second to none. She's received both her internship and full-time opportunities through the National Black MBA on the conference floor, set up a number of different opportunities for advancing her career. Katrina now is the brand manager at Rickett. As you all know, Rickett is one of the global leaders in CPG. And I can't say much more about her, but she's a trusted friend. She is a supporter of our LOT program as well. Without further ado, I want to introduce our subject matter expert today, Katrina Garner-Boyd. How are you doing today?
Hi, Norvell. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. I must say it's an honor to be here, mainly because this recruitment and this opportunity, it's just near and dear to my heart. It's exactly how I got my career started, post-MBA. And so I always said to myself, anything I can do to impart how I was able to get the job done, and then also get the career that I dreamed of started. If I can do that for anyone else and have a helping hand, that I would. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share my experiences with everyone here on the line. Just a little bit more about myself. My name is Katrina. I started my career, I would say, on the advertising agency side. And so I worked at a few agencies, and that's when I really developed a penchant for marketing and really wanted to see the, peek behind the curtain and understand what's happening from a business perspective. I would always get briefs, but I really wanted to understand more about the business side. I'm really sorry for the noise in the background.
That's okay.
This is what happens when you're working from home virtually. Right?
That's okay.
Yeah, so that's what spawned me to get more experience and get my MBA. And I found the National Black MBA Association to be very warm and welcoming in terms of being the perfect place to marry up all of the great companies that I've studied to become a prime candidate for, and me allowing myself to tell my story to these companies. And so, as Norvell mentioned, I got my first internship at the National Black MBA Conference at Campbell Soup, and it was phenomenal. So I'll tell you all about how I was able to navigate the floor, navigate the conference, and everything in order to achieve that. And then also went back because it's my home, this conference, and I was able to get a full-time offer from Bayer. But I must say it took a lot of preparation and a lot of support from my colleagues at Norvell, for example, at the time. So I'm here to really guide you through that, and so is Norvell, of course. And I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you, Katrina. And we're going to get into our workshop now. One thing that we're going to highlight here is we're going to focus more on the research and the prep side, and we're going to touch on maybe a couple different topics that we're going to get more in depth with as we go forward. But we want to kind of highlight what we see so far right now in terms of the conference floor. Now, the conference floor right now, which is going to be in Chicago, what you see here is a diagram of the conference floor. You're going to see some universities. So for those of you who are looking to look at post MBA certificates, if you're looking to get an MBA, if you're an undergrad that's on this call, if you're MS and you're looking to get into an MBA program, some of the same tactics that we're going to mention here apply to you as well. For those of you who are looking for a PhD program, this is a good opportunity for you to go to the conference as well, because the universities that are highlighted here, a number of them have PhD programs, which are going to be important. Now, the blocks represent companies. Each block represents a specific company. And why that's as important is that you now have to navigate which companies you're going to go to, who companies are going to be there. On our website, on our national website, you will see the list of companies, and we're going to add companies companies are added on a daily basis. And this gives you a landscape of how you're going to probably approach what are you probably going to be thinking about in terms of entering the conference floor, which is very, very important. We won't spend too much time on that, but what we're going to spend time on is now first getting you ready. Now, Katrina and I have to say Katrina and I, because we went through the trenches together with many of our candidates at the Rutgers Business School. We had to kind of figure out exactly before we start looking at companies, before we start understanding what career opportunities there were, we have to kind of understand who we were in this process. And Katrina, can you talk to us about the recruiting planning process and why this is so important? We're gonna get into each of these steps, but talk to us about how this is so important.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you think about it, when you're at the National Black MBA conference, that there are tons of companies. And not only that, they are recruiting for positions from finance to supply chain to marketing. And you know, it becomes very overwhelming when you get there, because it's like, wow, this is my opportunity to really shine and meet key players at these companies. So in order to avoid that overwhelming feeling, I would say a lot of the preparation in terms of navigating the environment and finding the right companies and making the best of your time when you get there is understanding what you want out of your career. And really doing a lot of introspection work up front to the nitty gritty details, not only, you know, from a location standpoint and where you want to work, but also, you know, where exactly you want to take your career. So understanding, you know, is it more marketing? Is it more finance? Is it more supply chain? Or and even if you decide, hey, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to do finance or I want to do marketing. You know, what type of experience do you want to have? Do you want to do it at a CPG company? Do you want to do it at a pharma company? Do you want to work more so on the consumer side or the customer side? So just really understanding in depth what you're looking to accomplish. And then all of the prep work that comes out of you having that deep level understanding of what direction you want your career to go in will fall into place. And it will help you have great direction once you get to the conference.
Now, one thing to highlight here is that when you are assessing yourself, you're also assessing your gaps as well. That's important when you're going into a field where you don't necessarily have that much experience. Some other candidates may have a lot of experience. For example, individuals who are going into finance. Some people that you might be competing against may have years of experience in finance and you may not. So what is going to be the difference in your experience in terms of your recruiting experience trying to get those positions? By highlighting your career goals, your career accomplishments, you now get to talk about your brand, you get to talk about your narrative and what you bring to the table, but you're also being clear in terms of understanding where your gaps are. So when you identify your gaps, you also have to do some research and understanding of how you're going to help close those gaps so you can present a case that you are still ready for this opportunity. Another thing that I would want to say here is that when it comes to location, companies and location are tied together. Now, you may have a company that might be headquartered in Illinois, but may have locations in other places. Being real to yourself and understanding, do I really want to live in Minnesota? Do I want to live in the North when it's cold? Do I want to be in Arkansas? And there's only one real company in Arkansas, so we know what company that is, in Bentonville. Do you want to work in that company? Do you want to work on the West Coast, the East Coast? When you're looking at your career goals and your trajectory, what you're really doing is you're mapping out the next two positions, not your first one, but the next two positions. Because ultimately, your goal is not to just get in the door. Your goal is to get to the next level once you get in. But by identifying where you're at in the recruiting process and understanding where ideally you want to go will play a part in terms of the research that you will do. Now, let me give you an example of this. What you see here is I could say this is like a profile of Katrina and I and many other people that were in advertising prior to brand management. In brand management, There are a number of different skills and opportunities that you do get. But typically, if you're not in brand management, what you see highlighted in red are pretty much some of the skills you probably have developed. Advertising, budgeting, understanding creatives, working with agencies, understanding metrics on print and digital. At that time, they were still print. But now, by understanding where you want to be, Katrina, talk about why you went to brand management, and then ultimately, how did that shape now understanding where your career trajectory would be?
Yeah, great question in terms of, I think it's a really interesting dance, right? Because when you're applying for a position, you know, we're all trained to say to ourselves, hey, you know, what are the areas in which I shine and I need to sell them on why I'm a fantastic candidate. And when you're jumping careers to an extent, you still have to prove that you're capable of learning the required skill sets to really have a place in your next role. So I would say, you know, when I was on the agency side, you know, I learned everything exactly what Norvell is mentioning on the bottom left-hand corner, advertising, budgeting, and creatives. But I also had to take those skills and my career examples and really think about, hey, I actually, even though I haven't had full brand management experience in finance, here are some examples of how I'm quantitatively focused. Here are some examples of how my advertising projects really led to a great ROI and how I had business-minded thinking. So it's all about taking the skills that you do have and that you have developed and being honest about the fact that, you know, there are some skills in this new role that you need to perfect, but that you have the ability and the potential based on your past experience to absolutely get there over any other candidate. So it's a very, you know, that's the dance that you've got to be able to create for yourself while you're talking to these companies.
We call this a boxing above your weight class. In order to get to the next weight class, you got to show that you're an expert in your current weight class. The difference between marketing and brand management, people will tell you, are the same, but the people who are really in the industry will tell you is completely night and day. When you're in brand management, you are running a business from soup to nuts. You are the one person in charge and everyone else is part of your cross-functional teams. Now, think about this as it relates to other opportunities that you want to get into. You might want to go into opportunities that you're currently in, or areas or industries that you're currently in. The National Black MBA Conference allows you an opportunity to go and box above your weight class, which means they're looking for people who are qualified, but people who are capable. And you can be capable in the experience that you currently have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything in your current role. So when you are mapping out what you want to do, it's part of your journey and filling your gaps is saying, I want an opportunity to manage a P&L and say, that's okay. They're going to say, companies are going to ask you, well, have you managed the budget or have you managed what's your experience with numbers? You can clearly go back and say, well, I've managed different campaigns and this was the process, as Katrina mentioned, here's the ROI, or here's the opportunities that I've presented and here's how I've saved the company money. One of the reasons why I want to come to your company, one of the reasons why I think I'm qualified for your company is because these reasons. So you're telling them I'm an expert in this field, but I want to grow in my career. And this is an opportunity for you to do so, but you can only do that if you're able to lay things out. The one thing that you would hear, and Katrina would say this, Katrina has been on both sides as a candidate and as a recruiter, because I've seen on the conference room many times, people who think that they know, don't know. And the people that want to know, those are the people that they're excited about. It's not about knowing everything. It's about showing that you're capable and I have the ability to grow.
Yeah, I think I love the point that you made, Norvell, about the National Black MBA Association, particularly the conference. That's the difference between applying for a job on LinkedIn or any other job website. These recruiters are looking for potential and they know that people are going to come from different backgrounds. So I think, you know, really honing in on those transferable skills and applying what you're currently doing and how that will make you a great candidate for any slightly new or completely new career path that you're going to take. is important in this environment, because these are the types of candidates that they're looking for, from what I understood.
Absolutely. Now let's get into the research. So we identified exactly who we are, we've identified our careers, our gaps, some of our goals, where we want to be. Now here comes the research. Now, people may think that they may look at a website and get research and understand. I kind of looked at your website and I know the colors, I know the layout, but there's a lot of hours. And to be honest with you, it is painstaking. There's a lot of time that needs to be dedicated to it. So Katrina, can you walk us through some of the key things that you must know about, what you need to research, and then we'll get into how that's going to manifest itself in terms of like how we go about doing it?
Yeah, when you say painstaking and a lot of long hours, I would completely agree. And before I get into it, I would just harken back to the first point of real introspection, because once you figure out where you want to go, there's only going to be a few companies that come to the top, and that'll allow you to research at the depth that you need. Instead of researching 50 companies, you know that there are probably 5 to 10 that are perfect for you, and it's going to drive you to do the in-depth research required. But I would say, everything that you have here on the screen is completely right. Understanding also, what the current state of the business is in terms of revenue, profit, who's driving the business in terms of the CEO and the key leaders, especially when it comes down to the types of roles and industries you're looking for within that company. I would say absolutely understanding how the company makes money. And I really think, this sounds kind of soft, but culture, training culture. Are you going to be happy there? Because I think a lot of, you'll find that the key differentiator between a lot of companies, particularly in a certain industry, is, are you going to succeed there? And culture has a lot to do with that. So I'm not going to repeat everything on the screen because I agree, but those are the additional ones I would say.
Now, one thing I want to mention here is, as you do look at the industry, you look at the competitors, you'll be also looking at if this is the right industry you should be getting yourself into. Is an opportunity to kind of pivot into another industry that's growing. So as you are looking at the year-over-year growth, as you're looking at and we'll tell you the sources where you're going to find this information when you find out the revenue and how things have changed, especially now that we've gone through maybe almost 2 years during this pandemic, where a lot of companies have changed the way they've recruited or changed the way they make money or changed the way they are in the space right now. They've transformed themselves to other opportunities. So this is a way for you to kind of say, okay, what should I do going forward now that I have this information? Let's see how this works. But one thing I would say here is that you need to also understand how they recruit. Now, how they recruit is going to be by going on their website, by Googling and figuring out what schools they interview at, what companies they're connected with, what organizations they're connected with as well. Because you also want to understand the cycle of how companies recruit. And we'll get into that in another session. Ultimately, from a cycle perspective, is this the main season that they recruit? And how many people are they looking to recruit? Are they looking to hire 2 people, 10 people? They may have an opportunity where they're going and saying, we're going to hire 20 people from diverse backgrounds. 10 of them are going to be from our core schools. 10 of them are going to be from National Black MBA. Those things are going to be important because you want to be in the forefront of this opportunity. Just before this call, I just got a lovely text that said that a company reached out to them prior to the conference. The conference is a month away, and companies are already reaching out to candidates as well. While that warmed my heart, it also let me know that people need to start getting ready. So we'll get into how you're going to register for the conference and making sure that your resume is available and up. But companies are already reaching out to candidates, and we'll get into why that's important. Now, these are some sources that you need to look at. Katrina, can you talk to us about the annual report and some of these aspects of how you're going to now kind of sift through information, and how much information are you really extracting from these sources?
Yeah, I always, these are absolutely great resources. I always start with what's the latest and greatest from a current event standpoint for the company. Know what their hot buttons are, know what the hot topics are. And then that will kind of guide you in terms of what to look for in their annual report. For example, if you know they just had a merger or an acquisition, Look into their annual report, see what's working for them, see if it is working for them. Just have the business context in mind, because when you're interviewing, you'll be interviewing with the leaders of these companies in certain aspects. And so you want to just show that you have, one, the passion to know exactly what's going on with a particular company, but then also that you are well versed in not only the numbers and what their top line revenues are, the profit, are they growing, are they not? You want to show that you have that information in your back pocket. I would add one thing here is, if possible, try to get to know someone at the company prior to when you start. Another resources are the employees. So you can really, there's no better resource, actually, I would argue, because they'll tell you exactly what the hot buttons are, of course, but then also how to interview for the particular company, or the interviewer itself, how you can really get to know them and impress them.
I have reached out to so many people at the time I was going through my process, reached out to so many people, and you'd be surprised with a humble message about learning, would love to learn about your career, understand more about the company. And you'd be surprised how much people will say, yeah, I got 20 minutes to give to you, or I got 15 minutes, or I got half an hour. Those things go a long way. But when you do start doing that, when you start that research process, understand that when you do get contacted, you have to start knowing your numbers. You have to know your career. You have to know all the information that we're going to highlight here. So before, when you go through this process, because right now we're laying out the map here before you actually do anything. But once you get into start executing, make sure you're prepared, because once someone says, give me a call, you got to call them, and you got to be prepared for anything they're going to throw your way, because what they're also doing, and this is the truth, we're also doing is protecting their own reputation. Before they introduce you to someone else, they want to make sure that you're ready. And if there's a gap, you want them to help you out, as opposed to you asking them for help in this gap. You want them to see your genuine self. Again, these research methods are important. You're also going to look at some of the jobs that they have on LinkedIn as well. So you're going to see from a conference perspective, there's going to be positions that are, one, available on LinkedIn, two, available on the company's website. You're also going to brand yourself as a person that can create their own position as well. We'll get into that another time, but ultimately, you may not be in a certain box of a certain position, but you can see by other people's trajectory that you can follow the same trajectory, and there's not a position out there that can fit the mold. So I've seen people create positions for people as well. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, one thing I want to highlight here is, Katrina mentioned, as you do research these companies, there are a lot of opportunities that you're going to see here. This is an example of the CPG industry. And what you're going to see here, all of the brands that you see here, from cookie, confectionery, crackers, gum, they're all kind of lined in this particular bunch here, right? These are the major companies. But then when you take a step further now, those companies own a majority of the brands. And this is the same in the pharmaceutical industry, in the consumer health industry. I can go in different industries. But what's important about this is that once you decide that you want to go in a specific industry, you have to understand that you need to be well versed in understanding who are the leaders in these categories. You might not want to know the last brand that's on the aisle, but you want to know who the 5 major players are. Katrina, can you talk to us about when you were applying for Campbell Soup and how they grilled you down on, your knowledge of the industry?
Oh yeah, they did, and they did it in a way where it wasn't direct. They didn't like ask you test questions, but when they ask you about examples of what they like, they would ask you, what's the best innovation or innovation that you're most inspired by that came from our portfolio? Well, there's no way you can talk about innovation in a product launch without talking about the marketing strategy and the immediate competitive set that they have. It's not a direct question, like I said, where they're saying, hey, so who are our top competitors? But if you weave this type of information into your responses, it shows that you're well-rounded, you understand the hot topics in marketing and how to think through strategic questions. And so that's how it came about in a lot of my interviews. If you're missing some of the basic information, then you kind of get points off in the interview, which we'll talk about a little bit more about how the interview process is evaluated.
And as you're researching companies, everyone, you're going to start understanding that if you want to go into certain areas in your career, it may be best for you to narrow down your search in terms of focusing on industries where you want to be familiar with, as opposed to just looking for a job that looks cool, because then if your job looks cool, then you're going to be looking at 50 different categories or 50 different types of industries, which is a lot of information to study on. And recruiters, when I say recruiters, I'm talking about the people who interview you, the people who are leads in these companies. I'm going to call them all recruiters for the sake of this conversation. They're going to be the ones that are going to say, this guy is all over the place. And you're going to sound like you're all over the place as well. So here's another opportunity here now, and with a little bit a more kind of hone it in. So in New York, one of the things that we discussed was that Katrina and I was like, we want to stay in New York City. We want to stay in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We want to stay close to the tri-state area. So we knew that if we're going to stay in this area, there's 4 different states that we could possibly work in. And here's all the companies all the categories that we can work, we could work for. So it's about 40 different companies, 10 different people, 10 different companies in consumer healthcare, 4 different companies in CPG within 4 states. And even that was a lot. Again, this is just in a local area. So by honing in your approach, then you start doing more of a narrow focus in terms of Katrina mentioning the culture. Are they going to support you in your career development? There are certain companies where they want you to be polished already as an experienced professional. And there's other companies that say, you know what, I want to groom you because I want you to be prepared for future opportunities. Katrina, can you talk about your experience when you started in CPG and now what that experience looks like from what most people experience from like a training perspective or opportunity perspective?
Yeah, sure. I'll start by saying, when we first opened up the conversation, it was all about that introspection and understanding what career opportunities and direction you wanted to go in. And there's always, even if you're going from going between jobs within the same industry, there's always a gap between what you have and what you're looking to build, because we're all wanting to grow, right, in our careers. And so what I looked for in a company was a company that was willing to train. So I really love the term that you use, like an academic corporation. And so when I kind of looked around New Jersey or the tri-state area where I know I wanted to stay, I was particularly looking for companies that had really great training, given the gaps that I knew I had in my career from previous, and in order to succeed in my next role, I just wanted a company that had some patience and allowed me to grow at a pace where I can really understand this new industry. So that's where I landed at the time. So I think that's one example.
And then now, as you do your research, now you look at prioritizing your grid. So this is the first part of the cheat sheet, which we'll get into. So this is an example of some key information. Again, your goal is not to know everything. Your goal is to understand some key elements of things that might come up in a conversation. So we made a fictitious name, ANGG company, $39 billion in sales. You got to know that. How they make their money in women's health, in pain and cough, in pharma. They have 35 brands. Whatever you need to put in there to make you remember this particular company is going to be very important. You need to know their competition. You also need to figure out who the key people you need to contact. You've met someone, you LinkedIn stalk someone about recruiters, executives. They're in a certain booth, and you need to fill out kind of why. Why should they hire you, or what's the gap there? When you were looking at your full-time opportunity, what was your why?
I would say that it was all about potential to grow. I mean, I wanted I want to be a leader, but more importantly, I want to know the subject matter very, very well. It's easy to jump from company to company and get the title, but I wanted to be comfortable with the subject matter so that when it was time for me to get promoted, I felt comfortable that I belonged there and that I had the full sweep of experience. So that's my why. I really wanted to become a seriously polished business manager.
And that's going to be important, everyone, as you look at the companies, understand why. Why, not necessarily why for the company, but what do you want? Because it's a partnership. And the more transparent you are in terms of, I would say, your desires, your true desires, the more you feel more human in the process. And I think and at the end of the day, you are dealing with human beings, people who want to see people win, and people want to see people that have experience of like results. So those two matches are so important. What you learn in your career is that there are a number of people who get promoted was necessarily expert in the field that they got into. Well, let's say expert, but they weren't necessarily like an expert in the current role that they're in, but they showed expertise in their previous role. So results matter, but also opportunity for growth is going to be so key. Now, when you do your research and you go through all these different processes in terms of trying to understand, that all these companies, Katrina, how are you going to tackle all these companies within a 2 or 3 day span? Because we'll talk about what happens outside of the conference floor, the exhibition floor, but when you're in the lines, on Thursday and Friday, when you're at the conference, or you're doing this virtually, talk to us about how it is so important to prioritize after you do get this research.
Yeah, this is where rubber meets the road. In this case, you're trying to manage your time. Companies know the difference between a candidate who walks up to their booth on a Thursday versus a Friday evening when it's time to close. So you want to make sure that you're aligning your priorities based on what they know to be true in terms of where you rank on their list based on the time that you get to their booth. I would say, I think the way that Norvell opened up this conversation is once you have that deep level introspection of where you want to go in your career, you're going to have just a few companies. And you're going to rank the ones that are really top on your list. They're going to have to be on a Thursday, as you're mentioning here. The one thing that I would sprinkle in here is you're going to have jitters when you get there. Like, even though you're going to come prepared, you know exactly which companies you want to talk to, probably already have some interviews lined up, you're going to want to get your jitters out. So think about maybe in the morning on a Thursday as your first company, just going to someone you're not so much interested in, just to get your nerves out, just to practice your elevator pitch a bit. But the companies that you're ranking should absolutely align with who you've done the research on, and that of course aligns with your the direction you want to go in.
And that's important. This leads me to a question. And for those of you who have questions, please feel free to use the chat feature, use the Q&A. The opportunities at these companies vary. We're talking about a company that may have 5 different or 8 different categories. It could be tech related, HR, marketing, research, engineering, finance, and accounting, which everyone knows that's different. People who want to go to specifically people who want to go into R&D, people who want to go into leadership programs. Every type of position that is available, whether it's a technical position or a industry position, it is available at this conference. To the point where we've had people come to us and say, hey, I cannot find men or Black women in a specific field that are interested in this or have come to us. Companies are looking to recruit. So when you think about business, when you talk about the opportunities, what you should be focused on is all companies are business, right? All companies are business. So business related means every single function within the business, down to a CTO, down to engineering. You think if they have a logistics, supply chain, even down to every single part in operations, they have it. And why that's important is that it helps you kind of decipher, okay, which companies I'm going to go for, because there are companies that you're interested in. And they also have the type of positions that you're looking for as well. Do not go to a company that you're really, really interested on this first day, and that's the first company that you talk to. I have seen people, and I've heard, and Katrina can tell you because she's been on the other side, she's been on both sides. A person that was very, very excited, and they, ultimately they wanted to talk to this one particular company, and the doors open, they ran to that company, tired or jitters, or I don't know if a person was sweating, and ultimately it was a bad impression. You only get one impression to, one time make a good impression. We'll talk about how you can kind of maybe go to someone else, maybe later on the day, maybe people might forget you talk to them. That's a whole nother conversation. We'll get into that another time. But ultimately, prioritize your companies, which are going to be very important. Again, this is part of your cheat sheet. Now, the one thing about your cheat sheet that must be included is case in point. Case in point is referred to as like the Bible of interviewing case preparation that you're going to find. From management consultant to brand management to any type of position, this is if you do not have this book, please go to Amazon. And I don't know this guy, but I'll tell you this, I've gotten maybe 3 different versions of this book, because regardless of where you're in career, you want to be able to have a conversation with individuals in a structured manner. So Katrina, as people are looking to identify their career experience, talk to us about the things that are in case in point that help them, that will help them map out what type of journey or what type of personal experience a person has had.
Yeah, and this really came through when I was on the recruitment side and I was interviewing candidates. You have a ton of experience. You're a professional. You've had a few jobs under your belt. Structuring the answers to your interviews is having the experience is one thing. Structuring it and being able to narrate your story in a way that is relevant to the role that you're applying for. That's what case in point, and that's what it helps you do. It's basically a framework for taking your ideas and organizing your thoughts in a way that makes sense to anyone, particularly your interviewers. And so, I mean, I've had people, I've asked them to walk me through their resume, or I've asked them behavioral questions before. And for example, with the walking through your resume, I've gotten 5-minute long responses that, in terms of what they were doing in some, as a teenager in their summer jobs, all the way up to, their careers as it pertains to the role that I was actually looking for. So you have to be succinct, you have to be organized in your thoughts, not only because, no one wants to hear such a long soliloquy about yourself, but it shows the interviewer that you can communicate really well, and you're a really organized thinker.
Now, when it comes to case in point, there are certain parts of case in point that are important. And one of them is going to be the STAR method. The STAR method is pretty much how you answer questions. And keep this in mind, every opportunity that you have in your career can be a story that you can tell, whether there are accomplishments that you have made, whether there are things that you did not accomplish. All of those aspects of your experience is something that you want to kind of go through. So what you're going to do is create a grid, and that grid is going to kind of highlight all of the different experience that you've had, including walking through your resume. And we'll kind of highlight what some of these topics are. As you create your grid, you'll have the left-hand side, the columns will be the actual categories themselves. And then on the right-hand side of the rows will kind of, the columns would be how you kind of have the topic, the question, and then you have the situation, task, action, and results. And then each row is going to be a different example. And here are the specific categories that you're going to kind of highlight here. Questions of, tell me a time where you had to lead a team. Give me a time you had to deal with ambiguity. Your strategic differences between you and your manager, what does that mean? Stress at work, how do you deal with your time management? The biggest thing that you're going to hear is, tell me a time where you've used numbers or you use data to make a decision. All of these questions, you need to think of scenarios in your professional career and how to answer that. Now, Katrina, we made this master grid and we had this ready for every scenario possible, no matter what company. Talk to us about how this made the process so much easier.
Yeah, it made it a ton easier than it could have been, especially given that you're in such an overwhelming environment. It's basically your map. So suppose someone drops you into the middle of the forest and you need a map to guide you. This is what this document is. You're essentially thinking about all of your experiences up front and saying to yourself, if I'm asked a teamwork question, this is going to be my response. Not only is this my response or the experience that I'm going to conjure up during my interview, I'm going to, in advance, structure it in a way that Case in Point would structure it, which is the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. And so you're going to come up with a good 15 or so experiences. And my recommendation is not to tie them specifically to a leadership example or a conflict example or an analytical example, but make your experiences broad enough so that whatever they ask you, you can turn it into a really strong response for that topic. So I'll just give you an example. Suppose use it from my experience. I used to launch campaigns and new equity driving tactics into the marketplace when I was on the agency side. So when I'm interviewing to become a brand manager, I was able to take that experience of, say, launching a new pharma campaign, and I was able to say, well, this demonstrated leadership because of XYZ, or this same experience, if they throw me an analytical question, how was that analytical? Well, it's because I did a lot of research. I used ComScore data to understand my audience, et cetera, et cetera. So that's part of the preparation, but make it flexible so that you're not scrambling in your interview, trying to memorize or conjure up what you wrote down exactly.
Exactly, and this is how it translates. So here's an example of a category. Your category is going to be a couple questions that you'll see in Case in Point, and they're all behavioral questions. You'll see them, and what you do is your first area, your topic, you have your category. Then you have the question or the topic. Topic is, tell me a time where this situation happened, and you want to bucket your questions into certain categories. Questions on leadership that you can answer, questions on your skills, questions on how you manage teams, questions on industry-related experience. Now, again, you get your question, and then ultimately you get your situation. So you tell people the situation. The situation was I dealt with an issue with a vendor, and the vendor was overcharging us for this particular product. And what I had to do was figure out how it's going to help save the company money, at the same time find a new vendor in order to create this new cookie situation I kind of had before. Some of the tasks that I did was I got the teams together to assess what's the market of new vendors. Do our customers want to replace a particular ingredient? How should we be looking at opportunities to what's the time frame that's going to take? And then ultimately you have your tasks, your action, and then ultimately your results. Now we're going to spend more time. We're going to spend more time with this. We're going to spend more time with this in our in upcoming sessions. But the biggest part that I want to leave you with here, and Katrina speak to this, is once you are talking about the results, you need to make this thing relative. Why is this experience and why is this story important to the job that you are applying for, the career opportunity you're applying for? Are you just saying this because you experienced this, or is it going to resonate with that particular person? Can you touch on that and why that's so important?
Yeah, I think the perfect example, I'll go back to the example of me on the media side, on the ad agency side, using the example of me launching a campaign. I did a lot of work and a lot of analytics, and I demonstrated leadership, but the results is not so much, hey, it launched, it was great, people loved it. Making those results quantifiable, because I know that that's what matters in business management, showing that the results led to X amount of revenue, or demonstrate or gave us an ROI that was much stronger than any other tactic. Really tying the results of what you've done to metrics that matter in the industry that you're applying for.
Thank you so much. And I think that's so important because there's been times, and I've gone through this process myself, even in practice, where I had a good example, but it had nothing to do with the company. Like it didn't resonate. It wasn't exciting. And to be honest, I've lost opportunities because first round interviews because it just wasn't exciting. Keep this in mind, and I just want to make sure this is clear. We're going to go through this process in such a way where you're going to refine your answers as you go through this. So the goal here is to try to get it as honed in as possible, as clear as possible. So as you're going through this process, you are not leaving opportunities on the table because you missed an opportunity to make it relative or make it connect with the actual interviewer. And that's so important. Also keep in mind, you might have two people who are interviewing with you. So here's what I'm going to say about the STAR method, and you can touch on this as well. Before your interview, you know who you're interviewing with. You know the people who you're interviewing with. You get either a name, you get maybe their bio, but you at least know who you're interviewing with. Understand the roles they have in their company, understand what they have done in their career. And you can say something as, Katrina, I know that you've had situations like this happen because you're in this field. And one of the things that I have learned, and you could attest to this, Katrina, you understand that if these things are not in place, you can cause issues within the next 3 quarters. And one of the things that I want to do in this company is, with the experience that I've had, is be able to learn how to do X, Y, Z. You can make it, now I'm just making things up, but ultimately you want to make it clear to Katrina that not only am I making it relative to the company, but Katrina, you understand what I'm saying here. You understand what I've been through. And that's so important.
I agree.
Now, one thing I want to also mention here is the industry specific information. Whatever your industry is focused on, whether it is finance, whether it's supply chain, whether it is a pharmaceutical company, however you look at identifying opportunities within your company as it relates to innovation or new ways in terms of like tech innovation, or even just understand the market, find a framework, and Case in Point has frameworks. Find a framework that will match for you, because you're going to hear a random question like, tell me a brand you like, just like that. And what they're looking for is a response like, I love Tropicana. Tropicana Tropicana is the #1 drink, orange juice in the market. It's sold in X amount of Z companies. They come in 7 different packaging. They're sold at the drugstore, club, grocery, mass market, which is Walmart and Target. One of the things that I like about Tropicana is that they've also come up with new brand extensions, and those brand extensions include these particular flavors. You name the flavors, and then you talk about advertising opportunities. So you're going through the 4 Ps. Whatever your framework is that you need to identify in your industry, that's going to be critical, because you're going to get a random question. Katrina, I know you ask people just random questions and people are stuck, whatever that may be.
That's how I decide between one candidate over the other, to be completely honest. They're like, as a recruiter, you'll ask a certain question, but there is an underlying what's written on the wall, but not very obvious type of answer that I'm looking for. And if you know the industry really, really well, as you should, because you've done all the research, you'll know what that person's looking for.
Now, with all that being said, we have just recapped session 1. I know it's a lot of information to go over, but here's a couple of things we want to highlight here. 1, your professional profile is important. Understanding who you are is so important within this process. Understanding the research and aligning the research to your goals and aspirations are so critical. The outreach in this process is going to be important, because you want to make sure you get an edge. Many people are going to this conference and many conferences to try to connect with individuals that they wouldn't connect with, you know, outside of this opportunity. So you need to be able to reach out to companies. You need to figure out ways to connect with recruiters, people that you know. It's going to be so, so important. And lastly, your cheat sheet is going to be important. Katrina, I still have my cheat sheet for many years back. I'm pretty sure you do as well. And regardless of where you are in your professional career, it's not necessarily going to change in terms of the framework, but talk to us about how the information is going to change, especially for seasoned professionals on this call.
Yeah, so you're going to have, you know, your experience is your experience, right? But you're going to tailor it according to what you know the company is looking for, what type of skills sets that particular industry that you're applying for within the company requires. And you're also going to have, as Norvell mentioned, like a column that shows what are the key facts in terms of that particular company. And so that's your cheat sheet. And I think as part of the development, it will come out naturally because you're the one who developed it. You know, no one knows you better than yourself, but it will change as you get from company to company. And that's what's going to keep you from getting too nervous on the floor.
And for those of you who have questions, feel free to raise your hands if you have questions. It's the perfect time. Again, our conferences, our upcoming career fairs are dedicated for individuals, regardless of where you are in your professional career. They're looking for a lot of seasoned individuals as well. Also keep this in mind, this is a great time to be Black. Just want to say that out loud. We're so proud of our people, and the opportunities that we're getting now is not because, you know, they now realize that, you know, that we deserve it, but we've worked hard and we are leveling the playing field. So we understand that there's also a process of understanding what this means for people that look like us, what that means for company cultures as well. So you can be the change agent within an organization to help develop and mentor individuals, not only within the company, but also people who are trying to get into various companies as well. So again, these principles do not change regardless of what you're approaching. So don't think because you are a VP, and I know we have a couple of senior people on this call, just because you're on that level does not mean that you don't have to answer the questions all the same way. Also keep this in mind, there's grading systems. Now, depending on where you're at your career, grading systems there's still grading systems regardless. So whether it's a casual conversation that you're gonna have with someone at the bar, or a conversation you're gonna have on a plane, we've had those conversations, or even at, you know, running into someone in a lobby, eventually you will have to probably go into that company and meet those other executives. So when you are meeting those executives, you want to make sure that you're fine-tuned with your responses, not from a perspective of talking to them about low-hanging fruit, things that you've done in your previous in your past life and early in your career, but you want to talk about big picture stuff, but you want to be able to do it in a structured way where it's easy to follow as well. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We have a couple minutes left here before we end our session here. So in terms of structure for resumes, I know we'll go about that. We'll talk about resumes at another time. But if you could briefly just talk about the 1-page, 2-page resume as it relates to now putting this all on paper, just briefly.
I always like the 1-page resume. I have a 2-page resume. I think your resume needs to be tailored to the job that you're looking for and the relationship that you may have already developed with a certain company. I really think that if you can't say it in a page, then you're not being succinct enough. So I would say play it by ear. What do you think, Norvell?
So for all those senior level people, I think having the 2-page resume is fine. But one thing we would also say is that it needs to be clear and concise, which means that you want to just mention your big ticket items. Anything that's past a certain time frame in your career should be summarized. For example, if you've been with a company and that company at that particular time, you moved up 3-4 times, you don't need to break down every specific position you've had. You could talk about various positions within 10 years within that company, but then talk about the next couple companies. In addition to that, you also want to factor in terms of the actual resumes themselves. We'll go into this another time, but how you give your resume is going to be also part of the process as well. So whether it's electronically by scanning your resume, or doing it in such a format that is easily identified. Using your LinkedIn profile is going to be important. That's always those things that we're going to get into in our next sessions. One thing that I want to mention here in terms of multiple versions of resume, the recommendation for the multiple versions has to do with if you are trying to go into two different functions. So if you are going from finance and you're going to finance to supply chain, and then you're going to finance to another area, maybe depending on the area you want to tailor it. However, your responses your responses are going to be the same, you know, I mean, in terms of like how you deliver your message. But multiple resumes, I think what we could do is kind of get you to a resume advisor, because we want specific examples, because that's not a yes or a no. But if you have 5 different resumes, I'm going to say no. One question here is what's the best way to reach out to a company prior to the expo? Man, okay, Katrina, let's start with LinkedIn.
Yeah. See who you know, who's already been at the company, who currently works at the company. I would prioritize and seek out those relationships you have in your in your personal network, someone you trust. And if you don't have anyone you trust who already works at the company, I am a big proponent of, you know, the LinkedIn feature where you know who knows who. So find someone, a mutual connection. There's got to be at least one person, and ask them for an introduction into someone at the company that you're interested in. Or you can reach out to someone in a very genuine way on LinkedIn directly. That's what I've done.
Now, for those of you who have years of post, who just completed the MBA and have their post-bachelor experience, there's a question here in terms of, you know, are you applying, if a person just received the MBA, are they applying for an entry-level role or a mid-level career professional? This has to do with the research of the company itself and learn how companies recruit. So there is a difference between an individual who just received their MBA and a person who is considered a mid-level professional. The difference is that when you go through the MBA process, you are in a class of individuals that are sheltered in a sense, because you just received your MBA, even if you have years of experience. However, if you're considered a mid-level and you go from let's say, for example, if you go and you try to show yourself as a seasoned professional, then you are just a person that is experienced in what you do, and they expect you to deliver on what you say that you're going to do. So it could be a difference in culture within the company. When I came in as an MBA level recruit, so did Katrina as well, and the level of training, money. Let's talk about the money that we got, the signing bonuses that we got were on a different level than people that were just people who worked professionally. So that's a research perspective thing that you need to identify. But if you just receive your MBA, you are entry level, and that's an entry level MBA, not entry level for a company, if that makes sense. Would you concur, Katrina?
Absolutely, spot
on. We'll do one more question before we head out here. Again, this is just the first of many sessions that we have. Katrina will not be a stranger to our chapter, as she will be involved next year with our LOT as a mentor. She's going to be happily being involved with our high school students as well. And she was one of the judges in the 2020 case competition as well, which was a great success. So without further ado, we want to thank you so much for Katrina Garner Boyd. Thank you so much, my dear friend. Much love to you. Look forward to seeing you. You're a couple exits away, something like that. So we got to get together. But thank you so much, and thank you for contributing to this great session.
Norvell, the thanks is owed to you. I mean, I thank you for the opportunity. So it's great connecting with everyone here, and great hearing your questions. And if you want a personal contact, like I mentioned, as someone on LinkedIn, please LinkedIn me, and I'm happy to answer or help in any way I can.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
We want to thank Katrina again. And for those of you who are interested in figuring out how to go ahead and register, please go on our website, NYBLACKMBA.org. When you get there, you will click on become a member if you're not a member right now, and that will take you to our national page where you become a member. For those of you who are members, you can go ahead and register right away to for our conference. The price, the actual housing and all logistic information is available online. For those of you who are specifically focused on the recruiting aspect, our recommendation is you come in on Wednesday night and leave a Saturday morning. There's activities that are happening from a conference perspective that we'll get into in our later sessions, but you can also go for updated information on our national page as well. Again, just to reiterate, there are 3 different opportunities for you to get involved in the recruiting sessions. We have September 9th, which is our chapter's quarterly recruiting opportunity, which thanks to Chuck Roberts, Cameron Anderson, and the entire team for leading that effort. With September 9th, our national conference is from the 14th through the 18th of September. And we also have a digital conference, which is focusing on opportunities nationally as well. Next week, we will focus on the elevator pitch and resume. And we have a special guest, another person who has done great things on our conference, who has actually been to the conference maybe 10 years in a row, 2 years as a student, and then 8 years representing her company as well. So she will be here. I'll leave that information for another day. Next week, we'll see other members of our team as well. So without further ado, we want to thank you so much. On behalf of our chapter president, Andrew Hamilton, we want to thank Morgan Stanley for sponsoring this event, and thank you so much for your contributions as well. We want to thank our executive team. Thank again our guest, Katrina Garner Boyd, and again, on behalf of our entire chapter, my name is Norval Barrington. Have a wonderful day. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. Please reach out to resumes at nyblackmba.org. Again, resumes at nyblackmba.org. And you can feel free to send us your email, as we have companies that are recruiting on a regular basis. If you have questions about this session and more, please reach out to us as well. We'll see you next week, next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful Wednesday evening. And thank you so much for joining the National Black MBA Metro New York chapter.